In the quiet folds of an ordinary life, a marriage once held together by years of familiarity began to unravel in silence. It was not a sudden catastrophe nor a violent storm. Rather, it was a slow erosion of trust and passion, unseen by most but felt deeply by the one who bore its weight. The husband lived a life shaped by routine work, home, occasional moments of rare tenderness that seemed more like fleeting memories than the foundation of a bond. His days were filled with the demands of providing, the careful balancing of responsibilities, and the quiet hope that what he had built would last forever. The wife, in the same house, walked through the motions of a life that once promised love and companionship. But beneath the surface, she harbored a restlessness that grew with every passing day. It was not born of cruelty or hatred, but rather from a profound loneliness, a feeling that the person beside her was becoming a stranger, distant and unavailable. The small gestures of affection that had once sparked warmth now felt like obligations to be fulfilled rather than desires to be shared. This void invited shadows. The wife found herself drawn to another, a figure who appeared as an escape from the suffocating familiarity. It was not planned or sought after with malice, but it came like a whisper in the dark, a promise of being seen, of being desired, of being alive in a way she had forgotten how to be. The affair began with stolen moments, brief exchanges that set her heart pounding with both excitement and guilt. Each secret meeting deepened the chasm between husband and wife. The husband noticed subtle changes, a scent not his, a distant look in her eyes, a hesitation in her voice that could not be explained away by stress or fatigue. But he chose denial, a desperate attempt to preserve the illusion of normalcy. Perhaps it was love or fear, or stubborn hope that kept him from confronting the truth. He clung to the idea that the woman he had known was still there, beneath the layers of silence and avoidance. The wife, meanwhile, became trapped in a complex web of emotions. The thrill of the affair was tempered by guilt and sorrow. She knew she was betraying not only her husband but also herself. Yet the connection with the other man offered a glimpse of something she had lost: passion, attention, the feeling of being important. It was a dangerous balance, one that teetered on the edge of ruin and redemption. At home, the distance grew. Conversations dwindled to polite exchanges about mundane matters. The warmth in their shared space faded, replaced by an oppressive stillness. The husband's world narrowed to work and the quiet ache of suspicion. The wife lived divided, torn between two lives that demanded her loyalty, but could never both be fulfilled. The turning point came when a small but undeniable piece of evidence surfaced. A message, a glance caught too long, a forgotten item. The husband faced the unspoken truth he had avoided for so long. The shock was less in the discovery itself and more in the recognition of how deeply the breach had taken root. It was a wound that threatened to consume everything they had built. But even in the face of betrayal, the husband's love did not vanish. Instead, it morphed into something more complex, a mixture of pain, anger, and an aching desire to understand. He began to question what had gone wrong, where the fracture had started, and whether repair was even possible. The betrayal was not just about infidelity. It was a mirror held up to years of neglect, silence, and unspoken grievances. The wife confronted her own turmoil. She was no longer just the one who had strayed, but a woman grappling with the consequences of choices made in desperation. The affair was no longer a secret escape, but a catalyst that forced her to face uncomfortable truths about herself and her marriage. Regret mingled with longing, and the future loomed uncertain and fraught with painful decisions. This was a story of broken promises, but also of human frailty and the tangled nature of love. It was not about villains or heroes, but about two people caught in the painful reality of a relationship that had shifted beneath their feet. The betrayal was both an end and a beginning, a harsh reckoning and a fragile opportunity for something new, whether that meant healing or complete rupture. The days that followed the discovery of the betrayal were marked by a heavy silence that pressed down on both of them. The husband found himself adrift in a sea of conflicting emotions, devastation, disbelief, and a simmering anger that threatened to consume his reason. Every familiar corner of their shared home seemed to mock him with memories of what once was and what had been lost. The walls that had witnessed laughter and shared dreams now echoed with the emptiness of broken trust. In the solitude of his thoughts, he tried to piece together the moments that might have hinted at this fracture. He recalled the subtle signs, the small changes in behavior he had chosen to overlook. Was it willful blindness or a desperate hope that kept him from seeing the truth? The realization stung deeply. Love alone was not enough to protect them from the fragility of human hearts. The wife lived through her own torment, a tangled web of regret and justification. She wrestled with the weight of her actions and the inevitable consequences. The affair, which had begun as a refuge from loneliness, had become a source of unbearable guilt. Yet within her there flickered a stubborn flame of defiance, an unwillingness to be reduced to a mere betrayer, defined solely by a moment of weakness. She confronted the paradox of her existence. A woman torn between two worlds, neither of which could offer complete salvation. The familiarity of her marriage, with its worn-out routines and fading affection, clashed painfully with the intoxicating promise of renewal that the other relationship suggested. But renewal came at a cost, one that threatened to destroy everything she once held dear. Attempts to return to normalcy were futile. The husband withdrew into himself, retreating from the shared space that had become a battleground of unspoken accusations and silent reproach. His mind oscillated between the desire to confront and the impulse to escape. The home that had been their sanctuary now felt like a prison where every glance carried the weight of betrayal. The wife, equally isolated, felt the sharp edges of loneliness more keenly than ever. The affair had shattered the illusion of escape, revealing instead the harsh reality of fractured relationships and broken promises. She faced the unbearable truth that her actions, meant to fill a void, had instead deepened the chasm between them. The couple navigated this painful terrain with an awkwardness born of shock and fear. Their interactions were marked by a fragile politeness, a hesitant dance around the wounds that neither dared to fully expose. Each day was a test of endurance, a struggle to find footing in a landscape altered beyond recognition. The husband grappled with his sense of identity. The betrayal challenged his understanding of himself as a partner and a man. He questioned his worth, his capacity to love and be loved, and the meaning of commitment. The pain was not just about infidelity but about the loss of a shared future, a vision once held sacred. The wife faced a similar reckoning. She examined her desires, her needs, and the reasons that led her to seek solace elsewhere. It was a journey of painful self-awareness, stripping away the comforting illusions to confront uncomfortable truths. She recognized that the fault was not solely hers, but a reflection of a marriage that had slowly crumbled under neglect and silence. In the midst of this turmoil, moments of reflection emerged. Both began to understand that the path forward would demand more than anger and blame. It would require honesty, courage, and a willingness to confront the deeper fractures beneath the surface. Whether that path led to reconciliation or final separation remained uncertain. Outside the walls of their home, life continued indifferent to their suffering. Friends and family, unaware of the storm brewing behind closed doors, carried on with their own routines and concerns. The couple felt increasingly isolated, caught in a private hell that was invisible to the world. The husband found solace in solitude, wandering through memories and regrets. He pondered the meaning of love, whether it was a binding force or a fragile illusion. His thoughts returned again and again to the woman he had married, the life they had built, and the distance that had grown between them. The ache of loss was profound, a wound that refused to heal with time. The wife confronted her own loneliness in the quiet hours of the night. The thrill of the affair was gone, replaced by the cold reality of choices and consequences. She felt the weight of responsibility pressing down, the knowledge that no amount of justification could erase the pain inflicted. Yet beneath the guilt there was a faint hope, a hope that the future might hold a different story, one born of truth and renewal. The tension between them was palpable, a fragile thread stretched taut by conflicting emotions. Neither could fully bridge the divide, nor could they sever the ties that bound them together. The marriage hung in a delicate balance, poised between forgiveness and despair. In this crucible of suffering, the seeds of change were sown. The betrayal, though devastating, forced both to confront realities long ignored. The silence that had once protected them now demanded to be broken. The possibility of healing, however remote, flickered in the shadows. But healing required more than desire. It demanded effort, vulnerability, and the courage to face the unknown. It required a reckoning with the past, and a commitment to an uncertain future. Whether they could find this strength remained the question that haunted their every waking moment. The passage of time after the revelation was marked by an uneasy truce, a fragile coexistence within the same walls that once held warmth and promise. Neither the husband nor the wife spoke openly of the betrayal, but the unspoken truth hung heavy between them, a constant shadow that shaped every interaction. The ordinary rhythms of life resumed on the surface, but beneath, the emotional landscape remained shattered and raw. The husband found himself wrestling with a storm of emotions that defied simple categorization. His grief was compounded by anger, not only at the act of betrayal but at the slow unraveling of intimacy that had preceded it. He questioned the foundation of their relationship, wondering if it had ever been strong enough to withstand the weight of disappointment and neglect. The man he had been, the partner he thought he was, seemed distant now, replaced by someone unfamiliar, burdened by pain and loss. In quiet moments alone, he revisited memories both joyful and painful. He recalled the early days of their union, filled with hope and dreams of a shared future. Those memories clashed painfully with the present, where love was eclipsed by silence and suspicion. He grappled with the paradox of loving someone who had hurt him so deeply, caught in a cycle of forgiveness and resentment that seemed endless. The wife, too, navigated her own complex terrain. She felt the heavy weight of guilt, a persistent ache that seemed to shadow every thought in action. The affair, once a desperate escape, had become a burden impossible to shed. She confronted the truth of her choices, recognizing that no external validation could erase the pain inflicted on the man who had stood by her side for years. Yet, amid this remorse, she also sensed the fragile stirrings of self-discovery. Her restlessness persisted, though now tempered by the harsh light of consequence. The distance that had grown between them was not solely the product of infidelity but reflected deeper fractures. Years of unspoken needs, missed opportunities for connection, and the gradual drift apart that so often accompanies long relationships. The betrayal was a symptom, a painful revelation of what had been simmering beneath the surface all along. Both struggled to find their footing in a world transformed by mistrust. The husband's confidence in himself and in their marriage was shaken, leaving him uncertain of his place and purpose. The wife wrestled with conflicting desires, to repair what was broken, to seek forgiveness, or to forge a new path entirely. The future seemed like a vast unknown, daunting and fraught with risk. Their interactions became careful and measured, each afraid to break the fragile equilibrium with harsh words or accusations. The home, once a sanctuary, felt like a battleground where every glance and gesture was scrutinized for hidden meaning. They lived as strangers under the same roof, haunted by the past and unsure of what lay ahead. Amid this emotional wilderness, the husband began to contemplate the meaning of forgiveness. He questioned whether it was possible to rebuild trust on foundations so deeply fractured. Forgiveness, he realized, was not a simple act but a process, a slow and painful journey requiring empathy, patience, and a willingness to confront pain without turning away. It demanded that he reconcile his hurt with his love, an impossible task that consumed his thoughts. The wife recognized that seeking forgiveness was only the beginning. She needed to confront the reasons that led her astray, to understand the loneliness and dissatisfaction that had driven her into the arms of another. This journey of self-reflection was painful and humbling. She confronted parts of herself she had long ignored: fear, insecurity, and the deep human desire for connection and validation. Together, though unspoken, they were bound by the shared weight of this ordeal. Their love, though battered, still flickered beneath the rubble of betrayal. It was a testament to the complexity of human relationships, that even in the face of profound hurt, the threads of connection endure, tenuous but persistent. Outside their private world, the expectations of family and society added pressure. The couple faced judgments from friends and relatives, some unaware of the truth but sensing the strain. The unwelcome scrutiny intensified their isolation, making it harder to navigate the path forward. They had to choose whether to shield their pain in silence or to expose it in hope of understanding. The days stretched into weeks and slowly, small gestures began to break through the fog of resentment. A quiet apology, a tentative attempt at conversation, moments of vulnerability that dared to breach the walls of defense. These gestures, fragile as they were, marked the first steps toward healing, signaling a willingness to try despite the risk of further pain. Yet, even as these tentative efforts emerged, doubts remained. Could love alone suffice to mend what had been broken? Was the foundation strong enough to withstand the scars left by betrayal? The questions loomed large, unanswered and unsettling. The wife's affair, once a secret escape, had become a catalyst for transformation. It forced her to confront uncomfortable truths and to reevaluate the priorities and values that shaped her life. The experience was a painful awakening, a reckoning with the complexities of desire, commitment, and human fallibility. The husband, in turn, faced the challenge of redefining his understanding of love and loyalty. He grappled with the tension between anger and compassion, between holding on and letting go. His journey was one of painful self-discovery, marked by moments of despair and flickers of hope. Together they stood at a crossroads, one path leading toward reconciliation, marked by hard work and forgiveness, the other toward separation, a release from the pain but also from the shared history they once cherished. The choice was theirs alone, fraught with uncertainty and consequence. In this crucible of heartbreak and hope, they learned that love is never simple. It is a fragile, complex force that can both bind and break, heal and harm. The betrayal was a rupture, yes, but also an invitation to confront truth, to grow, and perhaps to find a new way forward. The passage of time did not erase the scars left by betrayal. Instead, it transformed them into enduring reminders of what had been lost and what might still be salvaged. The husband and wife, once bound by shared dreams and whispered promises, found themselves navigating a terrain marked by caution and fragile hope. Their relationship had been irrevocably altered, but in the space between heartbreak and forgiveness, new possibilities began to emerge. The husband's heart remained heavy with pain, yet beneath the sorrow, a quiet strength began to grow. He recognized that healing was not about forgetting or excusing the betrayal, but about reclaiming his own sense of dignity and peace. Forgiveness was not an erasure of hurt, but an act of liberation from bitterness, from the corrosive power of anger. It was a choice to move forward, not necessarily together but with integrity intact. In this process he discovered resilience he had not known he possessed. The man who once saw himself solely through the lens of his marriage began to redefine his identity. He reclaimed parts of himself neglected in the years spent in complacency, rediscovering passions, ambitions, and a quiet resolve to live authentically. His journey was painful and solitary, but it was also one of profound growth. The wife, too, embarked on a path of transformation. The consequences of her actions forced her to confront the deepest parts of her being, the fears, desires, and unmet needs that had driven her toward infidelity. This introspection was neither quick nor easy. She wrestled with shame and regret, but also with a newfound clarity about what she wanted from life and from love. Her understanding of commitment evolved beyond traditional notions. She came to see that true fidelity was not just about physical faithfulness, but about emotional presence, honesty, and mutual respect. The affair had shattered illusions but had also illuminated truths she could no longer ignore. The woman she was becoming sought not escape, but connection. Real, vulnerable, and meaningful. Though their marriage could never return to its former state, the couple faced a pivotal choice: to continue down separate paths or to rebuild something new from the fragments. This decision was not made lightly. It required courage to confront pain, to communicate openly, and to acknowledge the imperfections inherent in every relationship. In moments of rare intimacy, they glimpsed the possibility of reconciliation, not a return to innocence, but an acceptance of imperfection and a commitment to growth. They recognized that love, once fractured, demanded honesty and effort beyond what either had previously imagined. It required patience with one another's wounds and a willingness to heal together, even when the path was uncertain. Yet, reconciliation was not inevitable. The wounds ran deep, and sometimes love alone could not bridge the divide. The couple wrestled with the reality that separation might be the kinder path, an acknowledgement that some bonds, once broken, cannot be fully mended. Choosing to part was not a failure, but an act of respect for their individual truths and futures. Whatever their choice, the experience left an indelible mark on both. It was a crucible that revealed their humanity, the capacity to hurt and to be hurt, to betray and to forgive. It was a testament to the complexity of relationships and the fragile beauty of trust. In the aftermath, the husband found peace not in vengeance or bitterness but in acceptance. He released the grip of anger and embraced the possibility of a future unburdened by past betrayals. His heart, though scarred, remained open to love in whatever form it might take. The wife carried with her the lessons of pain and redemption. She understood that mistakes do not define a person, but can serve as catalysts for profound change. Her journey was ongoing, marked by humility and a renewed commitment to authenticity. Together, their story was neither a tragedy nor a fairy tale. It was a raw and honest portrait of human imperfection, a narrative of loss, reckoning, and the search for meaning amidst broken promises. In the end, it was a story about the enduring complexity of love and the courage it takes to confront its darkest moments.